Well, sucking at something is the first step towards kind of being good at something.
Right.
And
Right.
that's
Right.
exactly what it is.
Right.
Like, you're going to suck at things over and over and over. And as long as you learn right away and implement what you
Yeah.
learned right away, hey, you're going to improve and get better. So you got to suck.
All right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Empower Your Health podcast with Drew. I am joined today by Mike Applegate, who is the medical guru who lives at the top of the mountain, who you go to see with all of your burning questions. Um, so I won't introduce him. If you guys are listening to the pod, you know who he is. And then we are joined today with Dr. Alex. And I meant to ask you, Alex, how to pronounce your last name. I'm going to say Spinoso, correct?
Yeah, perfect. There you go.
Cool.
Mhm.
Dr. Alex. Yeah, Dr.
Yes.
Alex Spinoso. Yeah. MD. He is a medical doctor. That is not all that he is. He is also an entrepreneur with a business portfolio of businesses doing about $250 million annually in revenue. That includes Genesis Lifestyle Medicine, where he's a CEO. He is passionate about mentoring others. He runs a very active mastermind group for other medical professionals. I believe he calls Dallas, Texas home, but from what I understand, he's all over the country
Yes.
most of the time. And he's also a comic book geek and car guy, which I'm not a car guy or a comic book geek. So if he talks about that, I'll just sit here and politely listen. So, but anyway, we've been trying for the past couple months to connect. Alex has a very busy schedule, so I really appreciate, Alex, you taking the time, and you, Mike, who also has a very busy schedule, to hop on the pod. What I kind of want to do with this pod, and we have give or take about an hour, was spend maybe the first half talking through some common health goals and challenges that a lot of the people, the patients at your clinic, and a lot of my clients are dealing with. Things like weight loss, diabetes, insulin resistance, cosmetic issues that have to do with your skin and hair, um, sexual health, libido, talk about hormone replacement therapy and TRT a little bit, and then talk about joint health, chronic pain, and maybe finish up with heart health before we dive into something that we're all passionate about, but I think especially you, Alex, which is kind of the mindset of success, and what are the intellectual and psychological tools that we need to be able to have the reality that we want, both professionally and personally. So hopefully I'm not setting the bar too high for you with that intro.
No, that was pretty incredible. Jeez. I hope I'm going to invite you to do my eulogy.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'll be your hype man. Just let me know what.
There you go.
Just let me know what the intro song is. I'll do it. So, so
Absolutely.
yeah. So I wanted to start off and just kind of open this up to you guys with weight loss. It sometimes I roll my eyes a little bit because when we're talking about health, it's usually the first thing. And I think if you've been in the health space long enough, but sometimes you can get tired of it. But it's such a big issue. Obesity, in a broader sense, metabolic health. Diabetes and obesity kind of tied together with insulin resistance. So I wanted to the topic I wanted to talk about was that, and like, what are the main tools that people need to be aware of that are listening to this, regardless of what age they are, like what testing tools, what lifestyle tools, and what medical tools. So whoever wants to chime in, just jump in. But, we've got still 70% of Americans who are overweight or obese. I think GLPs have kind of helped flatline that a little bit, but we still have this epidemic. We're still the largest country in the world when it comes to waistline. So what do we do about it?
Right. So Genesis Lifestyle Medicine has been treating weight loss for 15 years. We started as a, weight loss company. When we were doing back then, it was phentermine and metformin and Topamax, and more recently, everyone and their mother started to do GLP-1s and everything like that. And so we've been in the field doing weight loss forever, unlike a lot of the younger clinics that have been around just a few years that have jumped into it. And I think one of the things you're talking about when it comes to testing is that's a huge part of weight loss in general. You have your uh, people who come in and they stand on a scale and they say, "Oh, look, I'm overweight, I'm fat," and that's about it. And there aren't a lot of clinics that are doing the next level, which should be checking things like body composition
Yep.
analysis, whether that's you got an in-body or I mean, bigger hospitals will have a DEXA scan or send people out to a DEXA scan or a STITU or something to actually measure your fat, your muscle, your water, and everything in between. Then you have your resting metabolic rate, which is, your ability to burn calories when you're doing nothing all day long. And then you get into the athletic performance, which is your VO2 max and cardiovascular testing. And more recently, a hot button has been all of these continuous glucose monitors.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen on Facebook all the time now, everybody's got this continuous glucose monitor on. Oh, this helps my diet. You have companies like I think Lumen and stuff like that that have the almost like a breathalyzer to check glucose levels and ketone and ketosis levels for weight loss. So all of that kind of goes into foundations. And then one step beyond that is our pillars in Genesis are weight loss, hormone, sexual health, and aesthetics. And weight loss and hormones are almost never, uh, they're never individuals. When you have a weight issue, guaranteed, I would say 80 to 90% of the time, and that might be low, there's probably some sort of hormone imbalance at the same time.
Yeah.
So we always make sure that we're checking our hormones, the testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, your thyroid markers, checking insulin markers, your fasting insulin. And then one step beyond that, which we're not a gut health location, but if you're looking at gut health and nutrient evaluations and
Yeah.
things like that, those are all things that people should be looking at when it comes to the establishing just the diagnosis and what's causing the weight loss and the baseline part of it.
Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it, Alex. And that's something that Mike and I have talked about in some depth too, is really it's almost like reframing the conversation. This isn't about weight loss. This is about metabolic health. Because if we can improve your overall metabolic health, weight loss is kind of a side benefit to it, and it's like, but it's almost talking about mindset, getting people to understand, listen, it's not just about that number on the scale. It's about, especially as we age, the muscle mass, because we're losing to was it's something like 10% of your testosterone is declining each decade, I think is
Yeah.
the average. And after age 65, it accelerates even more. So we're dealing with this law of entropy for a lot of people around age 30 or 35, and it's exacerbated when we hit menopause or andropause, so it's like, all right, but let me make sure I understand this isn't just about that number that's on the scale. My muscle mass is probably the most important thing. And you listen to Atia and some other people talk about it, where it's like, hey, what if we boil it down, what are the most influential risk factors that we can control so that we can live a long time and have a high quality of life? Muscle mass is up there, strength is up there, VO2 max. You touched on a lot of them, but most mainstream providers, it's almost like they're not doing that due diligence. And I know, and I'm not going to blame them. I think it's the system that they're operating in. That's the beauty of something like Genesis Lifestyle, is you have this system that's actually a functional, useful system. And I've said this about Mike. He's going to do his due diligence, even if it hurts him a little bit. He's going to look over every stone and say, all right, how much of what's going on with you is related to your thyroid or your sex hormones or a cardiovascular issue or just a lack of muscle mass because you're not eating enough protein and strength training. So, yeah, Mike, what would you add to that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I enjoy all that. Actually, I appreciate everything you guys said. I can't stand scales. I don't really like gauging anything specifically by the number that somebody sees on a scale. I do like looking at a lot of different labs, and I don't like treating everything at one time either. I feel like if you're not focusing on the lifestyle changes that somebody really needs to make regarding nutrition, calorie intake, and exercise, stress control, sleep. I mean, there's so many things that really go into that. And I never want any of our patients, even though several of them do, to expect this to be kind of a magic shot. We all have patients that simply wants to take the shot so they can eat whatever they want, which is absolutely the wrong mindset for them to have with regard to these things. They can be fantastic for getting people over a hump, but they get to the point where people are so dependent on them that they're taking what up to 12 or 15 milligrams of tirzepatide every week to be able to maintain a certain weight that they seem to feel like is the magic number for them. And so we really try to avoid, and I know Genesis is real big on this also, and Drew also. I mean, the whole point about gut health is tremendous. I mean, that's really, Alex,
Yeah.
I know this is where Drew and I really have kind of gotten together a lot of times as we collaborate and refer patients back and forth, because I do not advertise myself as a nutritionist. And Drew does not advertise himself as a provider that can actually prescribe medications. So it really works out extremely well to be able to put all those pieces together, to really look at the entire puzzle.
Oh,
I think we lost him.
yeah, we're having some technical difficulties. Mike's joining us. Oh, you're back, Mike.
Sorry about
But yeah, so until that's okay. So yeah, but to piggyback on that, it's like it's kind of like, what do you boil it down to? Like, what are the most important things? And I think, and not to pick on mainstream medicine again, because there's things that they do well, but obviously we're failing in that. Some of what Genesis is doing, and Mike, what you're doing at your clinic too, is we're trying to come up with a model that is a much more effective model, for prevention and for treatment of common conditions that people are dealing with, and to me, it's a travesty that we pay all this money on health insurance premiums, and it's not subsidizing comprehensive stool testing, which has come a long way in the last 10 to 15 years. So, like most of the people that I work with, 98% of them have never run a stool test. But your gut is 3 to 4 pounds of flora that's 30 to 40 trillion bacteria. It's more than the cells that you have in your body. It weighs as much as your brain, but we're not testing it. And the same thing with hormones. It's like, it's amazing to me that even they'll go to an endocrinologist, and unless you specifically ask for sex hormones, they're going to run TSH and that's it. And it's just wild that so much of these metabolic issues, and even insulin, which is not a standard biomarker, so much of these things can be at least be identified with some testing that's not ridiculously expensive. But people just don't know about it. They don't know about gut testing. They don't know about hormone testing. And they don't know about how important a body composition scanner is. And having somebody that can put together all that information and say, okay, cool, the blame pie for your poor health is probably 35% here, 35% here, and another 30% here. But that's kind of what we're doing.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we have everybody hates pre-medical biochemistry class and with all these fucking pathways and hormones and shit like that. But then you get to actually being a provider and they're like, "Oh yeah, you just have to check thyroid and that's your hormone panel."
Right. Yeah, it's absurd. It's absurd. I show people the picture of like the 50, like, I'm like, there's 50 to 60 pretty significant hormones. It's like your pineal glands involved, like your pituitary glands involved, your hypothalamus, your thyroid, like go down the list. Like every few inches, you're running into this major center for hormone production, but like no one's educating people on that. And it's like, there's some relatively simple tools, there's some lifestyle tools, and there's some increasingly great medications and peptides that can help deal with some of these issues. But your mainstream provider either doesn't know or they don't have the time to explain them to you.
Absolutely. Your mainstream provider, they only know about GLP-1s in terms of your Wegovy and Zepbound when it comes to weight loss. All they know is you're FDA approved, and even then they don't know that because they're going to recommend you get your 60 minutes of diet and exercise 3 times a week, and that's it. You can diet and exercise, cut out carbs, cut out sugar, and diet and exercise, and that's all you got to worry about. They don't have these they don't use compounded medications. They don't use peptide therapies. They're not using other medications like low dose naltrexone or phentermine or topiramate where appropriate. They're not optimizing hormones at all. I didn't learn about hormone optimization until I ended up in the hospital 4 times over the course of a month without any diagnosis. And I finally went to a buddy of mine who owned a hormone therapy center, and my testosterone was found to be like 72 long ago for no reason whatsoever. It was just, adrenal issues, etc. So you're not going to find that with your primary, your ER doctor, your normal hospitalist. They're not recommending Lipo B. They're not recommending methylene blue or NAD plus or any of those medications at all. None of those are being recommended by any mainstream physician or provider, nurse practitioner, PA at all because they have no idea about them at all.
Right. Right. And yeah, and it's almost like there's this battle going on right now between the old medical establishment that's really trying to hold on to their power and their influence. And then you have this increasing groundswell of individual researchers, lay people, and then also health professionals who are willing to think outside the box and say, okay, like, is there PubMed data on it? Great. Is there not PubMed data, but there's a whole truckload of anecdotal data, or animal studies that might this might be a useful therapy. Well, let's look at all of that and let's try to weigh out the benefits and the risks. And then look at the people who are actually overcoming things that mainstream medicine just manages year after year, decade after decade. Because to me, that's where the answer is, right? It's like, who's overcoming diabetes? Who is overcoming chronic joint pain? Who is troubleshooting insulin resistance? Who is troubleshooting parasitic issues and gut dysbiosis? Who's troubleshooting hyperlipidemia and calcium buildup? And things that we're told that like these are congenital. LPA is congenital, and you can't do anything and move the needle. I've had people drop their LPA 50 points. I'm like, it's not familial. And the same thing with heart calcium scans. That was ironically created by the guy who came up with the South Beach diet, the cardiologist, right? Agatson.
Hmm.
So it's like we have all, and I think that's where I think we're all passionate about this because we have these tools available. It's just you have to marshal these tools into a health system that actually makes sense from a business standpoint, yes, but from a therapeutic standpoint as well. I know, and we'll talk about the business stuff in a second. But so that's kind of weight loss and diabetes. I want to touch on this point too, because we're talking a lot about weight loss, but there's this diabetic piece to it, right? Because it's almost like the framework has shifted, especially with the GLPs, because GLP was a diabetic medication and still is. And it's working on blood sugar and insulin and glucagon and all of these gut and pancreatic hormones. That's why I tell people, I'm like, if you really want to take control of your weight, if you really want to understand weight loss, you need to understand the gut and the pancreas, you know? So talk about that connection between weight loss and diabetes and insulin resistance, because we've seen it was in 1960, 1% of Americans had type 2 diabetes. And now it's 15 to 17%. So, this is not a genetic thing that just happened or all of a sudden we started testing it. This is something that's driven by lifestyle, poor medication, whatever it is, that people just have shitty blood sugar and insulin control and a pancreas that can't keep up. So feel free, wade in. What are you guys seeing at your clinics with diabetes and insulin and blood sugar and the CGMs, which now you can get them over the counter? Like you said, Alex, over the last 9 months, now anybody can buy one. You don't need a prescription.
Right. Mike, you want to go first?
Well, I don't think it's anything nefarious. I really feel like it's more like the frog in the boiling pot of water. It starts out really slow. You just get used to eating what you want to eat when you want to eat it. We live in the most affluent country in the world, and you just sort of fall into these habits. And the food is gradually, I mean, what was it, 30 years ago? There's no such thing as organic food because it was just food, you know? And so now we're at the point where people are having to completely re-educate themselves because they're not getting this information earlier on, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So it's not like, this isn't necessarily some big conspiracy per se. This is a slow boil, over the last 60 years of just tacking up 0.5% a year, because of, increasingly bad lifestyles, pollutants, bad advice from government and medical authorities, et cetera. Alex?
Yeah, I think I think over the time it's interesting if you really follow the money, which is interesting when you follow the money about foods and processed foods and SNAP programs and all these different things in the United States, schooling, etc. And I'm not going to get highly political at all because I truly believe like just health in general and healthy food is bipartisan.
Yeah.
And you look at that, you have some of these major companies, Kellogg's, etc. The Lay's potato chips, which is the headquarters is down the street from where I am, owning these health foods or these cereals, and you look at all the additives, the dyes, just to make it more colorful, etc. And I posted on my Instagram the other day the difference if you just Google the color difference between Fruit Loops in the United States versus Fruit Loops in Europe. Fruit Loops in Europe are they're not bright at all. They're like a dull color. They're all the same. They're dull. In the United States, they are bright as shit. They're ridiculously bright. And you're like, well, they taste the same. And what's the difference? Well, the difference is a ton of additives that we throw in the US to make them prettier and to make them last 3 times longer. Food is not supposed to last on a shelf for 6 to 12 months. It just
Right.
is not supposed to do that.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
so I think that's a huge part of it. Just simple things like Mike was talking about, simple things that when I was growing up, there was the concept of, hey, in order to graduate from school in general, you had to be able to run a mile and do 10 push-ups and do like 5 pull-ups and stretch and do it's called the eraser test where you ran back and forth. The beep test, timed test came later on in college. You had to be
Right.
able to do those things. And if you look at physical education videos of people in the 60s, the 70s, and then even the 80s, you have, everybody was fit, everybody was more, thin, everybody understood diet and exercise, everybody understood overeating, etc. And maybe they didn't understand it, but that's just how the lifestyle was.
Yeah.
Now you go to places and you have bottomless fries, bottomless, hoagie rolls, Texas Roadshow. I mean, they are, or Texas Roadhouse, phenomenal fucking rolls, and they're amazing people, but they're bottomless. They
Right.
go on forever.
Right.
Olive Garden, bottomless sticks. You have a plate that used to be the size, when you go through school and they tell you, well, the normal serving size is supposed to be like the size of your hand total, and the size of your fist for meat, and you look at that and you realize, well, I'm eating 3 servings in one meal of what was supposed to be eaten a decade, 2, 3 decades ago.
Mhm.
And like Mike said, the plates just get bigger and bigger and bigger. Do you want to supersize that? Yes. The small is no longer a small. The small starts out as a large, and now it's a large, extra large, and extra extra large when you think about it. But
Right.
they repackaged it as small, medium, and large. So you're absolutely right. Where it's us not thinking as humans that is unnecessary. 3 meals a day of McDonald's is a huge difference of 3 meals a day of chicken, meat, steak, fish with vegetables and some carbs at a portion that's supposed to be for a normal human.
Right. Right. And it's almost like there's so many pieces of how we got here that I think for a lot of people it gets just completely overwhelming. I mean, even for health professionals, even for people like us who study epidemiology, and we try to take this 30,000-foot view and be like, what has caused it? And it's like literally you can look at every single piece of the health pie and there's a contributing factor. Like you can look at, well, we don't do this testing because I take a very systematic approach, in part because this is overwhelming for me and it's overwhelming for my clients, it's overwhelming for patients, and we're people who are in relatively good health. When you're dealing with a health crisis, which we've all dealt with one to some degree, then it's like, okay, I already don't feel good. My brain isn't working. And now I have to figure out, I have to do a quick anatomy and physiology lesson to figure out what the hell is going on with my body. So to me, it's like people almost they need a system. They need something that's like, listen, here's the tests you should run. Here's the ones that are worthless, and here's why. Here's the nutritional plan that's going to work best for you. Here's probably what you've done, and here's what it got you. Here's the exercise program you need. Something is better than nothing, but you need to strength train. Like you need to try to get some sleep. And if you suck in that area, we need to talk about lifestyle and therapies that can help you there. And then there are medications that are incredibly helpful, but there's a bunch that aren't, and it's almost like I've said this before, and I know a lot of people have talked about this. Casey and Callie Means talk about it. The Ways to Well guy, I'm blanking on his name. But that we're siloed and we're compartmentalized, and it's like we think like, well, fitness is over here and we have our fitness professionals, and then we have our nutritional professionals, our dietitians, which most of them are garbage, but the nutritionists are a little better. And then we have our medical silo, and then we have our mental health professionals, and neither the tween shall meet. And it's like this clan, the Avengers aren't meeting up. And I'm like, what if we infuse, that's what integrative medicine is. Good integrative medicine says, listen, there's a mental health piece. There's my mindset is fucking me here sometimes. So I need to assess that. What's best practice there? What tests do I need to run? What do I need to eat and drink? What supplements do I need to take? What do I need to be doing with exercise? How do I improve my sleep? And then what medical therapies do I need to take? And when you tell that to people, they're like, that seems like a lot. And I'm like, it is a lot, but that's what you need to do. And we've been sold a bill of goods because nobody told us it was this labor intensive. we were just told, like, dude, just live your life. And when you have trouble, go to the doctor. And if you do what the doctor tells you to do, you should be okay. And it's like, well, that is 100% untrue. The doctors were bought out at least 100 years ago. You go back to the Flexner report and you go down the rabbit hole, and it's like, listen, the medical schools were bought out a long time ago by the special interest groups and the pharmaceutical companies. And it's not to pick on the pharmaceutical companies because they're producing some good products, but most of them aren't working with your body. They're working against your body, so then you have other issues. So I just feel like they need the practical tools. And Mike and I have talked about that before. Like, we want to give them the practical tools, but then also explain to a level that everybody can understand why you need to be doing this. And I think regardless of what we talk about, we can talk about skin, we can talk about hair, we can talk about sexual health. We kind of always come back to, well, they weren't running the right tests. The diet was garbage. There were pollutants in the food. They weren't exercising. If they were overdoing it. They were doing too much cardio. They were sleeping like shit. They were stressed out, and they were taking medication that was damaging them rather than healing them. But it's a lot to deal with. So talk about that a little bit, Alex. Like, these are hard problems to solve. So talk about Genesis, you guys, and you too, Mike, like the model of care that's actually needed to actually help people transform or get a level of healing and not just manage a chronic condition.
Yeah, so Genesis has always focused on like healing from the inside out, where we focus on, yes, the buzz things, the weight loss, the hormone therapy, the sexual health and aesthetics, but it all starts with a very strong background and question. And exactly what you're doing is finding out what has worked for them. What are their other things that they've been doing? What have they tried? What have they not tried? What have they liked? What have they not liked? And realizing that every single person that we meet is an absolute individual. So no two, we're not a factory that everybody's going to get their same medication, everybody's going to get their same dosing, everybody's going to get their same treatment. Every single client that we have, and we call them clients, not patients, because patients are sick people that want to go to the doctor and get better, and clients are people that know that they can be improved upon and they want to get better and they pay for that. So they meet professionals in our world. We like to steal the Ritz-Carlton phrase, ladies and gentlemen being served by ladies and gentlemen. So we call them clients in that. And so as our model, our model is to get to the root of exactly what their problem is and fix it there, because we'd rather fix a problem and that problem is fixed and we never have to see them again. People don't understand that that's a better business model than keeping somebody sick forever.
Yeah.
Because in the latter, yes, you got a bunch of sick people, but then everybody always realizes, well, you just go to that doctor to stay sick. I never see any of them get better over the years. But if you're consistently improving people's lives, making them better, then the referral base is going to be anybody under the sun. And like you said, in the numbers of, let's just take obesity at the beginning, you're going to have millions of people that you'll be able to treat and help and improve their lives. The same goes for hormone therapy. I would bet my life that everyone over the age of 60 well, let's just not say everyone, maybe 99% of the people over the age of 60 have hormone imbalances. 70 to 80% over the age of 50 have hormone imbalances. So there's a good chance that that almost everybody can be helped with that. And obviously, if you have weight issues, you have sexual issues, if you have weight issues and hormone issues, you're going to have sexual issues.
Yep.
You're going to have issues with performing. You're going to have issues with erectile dysfunction. If you've had children in the past, you're going to have issues with urinary incontinence, possibly with reduced feeling down there. So there's going to be all those things that if you just treat one thing, great. What we do is looking to treat everything kind of under one roof because they're all interconnected. Because if you just fix one, you're still going to have two other problems. And that's most of the clientele.
Right. Right. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I like that. I also like the concept of actually fixing one thing at a time, though, because I feel like, they are related. But if you
I agree.
too much up at the wall at one time, you don't know what's working. So let's move the needle one variable at a time. And that's why I love the go slow and see what's the best we can do for somebody long term.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, and you
Absolutely.
Yep. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, it's coaching your client that this is a journey. The weight didn't come on all at once. Your hormones didn't drop off a cliff all at once. You need to get this is, precision medicine that is preventative. It's going to take a while for you to get to where you need to be. And this is a 12-month, 24-month, 48-month journey at the beginning to you just becoming a better person. But I guarantee you stick with me and we go things one at a time, you're gonna feel a whole hell of a lot better over time with me.
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to give people
Yeah. And like you
expectations also. If they're expecting everything to happen
that's where
at time, yeah.
Well, that's where I was just going to go. It's almost like that one of those first conversations with the new client is like, let me make sure that we're on the same page, that we have the same approach, and I want to probe your expectations. I do that on my questionnaire. You guys probably have those conversations or do that with your intake forms. It's like I want to make sure that you understand this is a partnership. Like there's things that I'm going to want you to do, and your results are going to be largely predicated upon you doing some things outside of here that are going to help you, right? So it's not that passive posture. That's the old model of the doctor is going to fix you. It's like, no, this is a partnership. Like I'm going to be a guide here and I'm going to be able to give you some tools that you couldn't otherwise maybe get, but you're also going to be learning and working alongside me. And that's how we're going to get optimal outcomes and we're going to have optimal results. But you said something, Alex, that it's a personalized approach and kind of even to what you're talking about, Mike, like you've got a lot of people that's like, let's do one thing at a time. But then you have other people who they've got a little bit more of a capacity and they're like, hey, listen, it makes sense that I've got this thyroid issue, this sex hormone issue, and this gut issue. I'm okay with doing these three to start because they have the health IQ and the capacity to do it. And you're like, okay, I'm going to put you on that personalized program. But for this other person over here, we're going to do one intervention at a time. So I think that's where it's like, it's not one size fits all. It never is because everybody's in a unique physiological place and everybody has a unique life circumstance. So like I can't just do a one size fits all because it literally doesn't work. Everybody's solution is going to be slightly different. So but yeah, it seems like to me, we kind of come back to this idea of its metabolic health. Like if I'm testing your metabolic health, your hormones, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, your lipids, and I'm looking at all of that, and then I'm saying, okay, let's get you on a good diet and good exercise program. And then Mike, like you said, what are the minimal amount of medications? Like what can we what one if it is in their case, what's one therapy that we can do that's going to solve three of your health problems? Maybe it's HRT, maybe it's a thyroid medication, maybe it's a peptide. So I want to touch on that a little bit, Alex. Before we were recording, we talked about it a little bit, but you have a very robust background in peptides. So
Yeah.
for like I'll just want you to speak to it. Talk a little bit about your formal education in peptides and kind of what's going on right now in the peptide space, as far as what's legal, what's technically not legal, and what do you think the future of peptides holds?
So, currently so my background is I do have a fellowship in peptidology. I went through, multiple courses for it, A4M, et cetera. There are over, gosh, 400 to 600, I think now, different
Wow.
peptides out there.
Wow.
And most people don't know that. However, the FDA has recategorized a lot of peptides to where they cannot be used anymore. So there's really three different categories of peptides in the FDA. There's category one, which is like bulk drug substances. You can still essentially compound these. You don't have any problems with it, etc. There's category two, which is they have more uh, significant safety concerns, and so these currently have been taken off the list to be able to be compounded legally. And then there's category 3 that they're nominated, but they don't really have any support whatsoever, and the FDA doesn't talk about them. So in that first group, you have your VIP, so your vasoactive intestinal peptide. You have GHKCU, which is really huge in like skincare creams. We've seen it more in hair now. Glutathione, your L-theanine, melatonin. your NAD plus, NADH. That's why you can see all those peptides being created now. You also have sermorelin in there.
Yep.
You could do BPC 157 patches as long as they're produced outside the US, and FDA approved or FDA cleared in the US. So those are all things you can do in class category 1. Category 2 are all the good ones, we like to say.
Yeah.
So these got taken off the list to be able to be compounded uh, about, I think it was what, 2 years ago now?
Yep.
And
Yep.
last year they ruled to keep them on the banned list. So that's your BPC 157 injectable versions, your Epitalon, which helps with telomere lengthening and anti-aging, your thymosin alpha 1, immune system, CJC 1295, and ipamorelin, both with their growth hormones, AOD, anti-obesity drug with weight loss, melatonin for tanning as well as erectile dysfunction, and then GHRP 2 and GHRP 6 for growth hormone as well. So all of those have been categorized to category 2. They cannot be compounded. Now, are there a bunch of people out there compounding them? Yes. Do they work? Yes. You want to make sure that you are staying away from anything that says for research use only. You don't want to buy shit that's online. The reason why is because in order to make these peptides, what you have to do is put a mercury molecule at the end of an amino acid. So you take an amino acid, have a mercury molecule that stabilizes it, and then as you add another amino acid, you move the mercury molecule down. Now, if you're making it in your bathtub or your backyard or whoever, and they're not for human consumption, well, then that means they likely didn't remove the mercury at the end because it is a very expensive machine and a very expensive process of compounding some of these drugs. So what's going to happen is you got a lot of people that go into liver failure, kidney damage, etc., buying this online garbage because of the fact that they're not for human use.
Right.
At the same time, these are research chemicals. They're not tested for purity. They're not tested for potency. As a pharmacy has to test at least 10% of their sterile drugs. So if it's an injectable medication, 10% of that gets pulled out, batched up, shipped to a place that a third-party tester, and you were not allowed to sell. You're not allowed to sell that 90% of medication until that 10% comes back totally okay.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. Right. So yeah, you're basically like, hey, because of the way that these laws are, and because of these research peptide companies not having to go through some of these quality control channels that they otherwise would have to go to, the risk just outweighs the reward for a lot of these gray listed and blacklisted peptides, which, like you said, it's like maybe in a better world and maybe in the future, it's going to change a little bit. And it's like, hey, these peptides that seem to have a bunch of anecdotal data and some decent PubMed data showing their benefit, like BPC 157, TB 500, you mentioned all the GH ones and melanotan and all of those, that they might, if they're produced correctly, could be a great tool in the toolbox. But as it stands right now, you just can't be sure, is your message, and say, hey, stick to the things that are in category. Yeah, stick to the things that are in category 1, which is going to be sermorelin, which is still a GH. You're still going to get some positive GH effects there. So some healing, some lean mass growth, the BPC patches, if they're not produced domestically, and did you say so is GHK? I know you can do topical GHK. Can you do injectable GHK? Okay.
No, the injectable is category 2.
I see. That's what I thought. I was like, I thought GHK was. So really, it's as far as the popular peptides, sermorelin, and then obviously your GLP-1s, which are peptides,
Your NAD plus, your NAD plus, your sermorelin, GLPs.
Okay.
Glutathione is a big one nowadays. Melatonin, people for sleep.
Yeah.
Then so those are all great.
As an injectable, people do melatonin. Oh,
yep, you can.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and I know the NAD, which is a coenzyme, anti-aging, has some great stuff. So yeah, so it's kind of sit and wait and watch with peptides, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely, and the FDA, I know, is the new administration is really going to be great on that. Make America Healthy Again is a great bipartisan platform where RFK, as soon as he got voted in, his first tweet was essentially like, to all FDA people, currently working in, pack your bags, clear your web browser. We're bringing peptides back. We're bringing stem cells back. He named all these things in his first tweet. And so the new uh, administration is a very friendly on helping legalize all of these with the right oversight.
That's right.
So, we've had meetings with, Marty Macri. We've had meetings with Dr. Oz. We've had meetings with RFK Jr. about stem cell treatments, about compounding treatments. We will be involved in a lot of that heavily over the next 3 to 4 years and continue that to where we hope that they bring a lot of these great treatments that we're helping a lot of people back that
Right.
got banned
Yeah.
and that got
Exactly.
reclassified.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like if we could make them just like anything else, like you think about stem cell, you think about PRP, like super concentrated PRP, and Regenerative does some cool stuff with them. It's like if you could make these more ubiquitous, then you could drive the cost down on some of these regenerative therapies too. And the same thing with everything, right? It's like we want this, and it's not a political thing, it's just an economic reality. If we can get a good free market system, the minimal amount of regulations, because you want regulations so people aren't producing things that hurt people, and then free it up for competition and people to kind of let the market regulate itself, then it's like now we've got all of these options, to be able to go and get peptides here, to get my PDE5 meds over here, to get my HRT here. And then it becomes proliferous. And it's like, this is what we're going to have to do on the medical side to stop some of the bleeding, which is what GDP, we're spending 18 to 20% of our GDP on medical, which in the 1960 it was like 4 to 5%. So it's like this is a large part of the reason that's making us fiscally insolvable as a country, is Medicare and Medicaid, and a crappy insurance model mimicking a crappy medical model. And it's like you said, it's like, hey, there's going to be some destruction as we're trying to break down something that is not sustainable and is hurting people, benefiting a few, but is hurting some people, or hurting too many people along the way. And there's a better way of doing this. There's a better way of paying for it. There's a better model of care. And we need to be messaging a healthy lifestyle as well, because we have the tools to solve this crisis. If you get enough voices, that are speaking it and modeling it. So anyway, that's the 40-minute mark. I want to leave some time for mindset, because we've kind of talked about a lot of the things in the physical, but a lot of the mindset is what drives success in health, what drives success in our personal relationships professionally. And I know that this is an area that you're passionate about. So just talk a little bit about that, Alex, like kind of what you have going on with mentoring, with your mastermind group, and just mindset in general, and kind of your overall message and your approach when it comes to mindset training.
Yeah, I think the reason why, so I run, like you said, a medical mastermind. Its name is Charismedx. So it's medical with, charisma inside of it. Because everybody thinks that charisma is just some people are born with it or not. And it's entirely untrue. Like you can train charisma just like you could train leadership, etc. So one of the things that we have seen, or I've seen specifically in the medical field, is that we go through our entire lives training in medicine. We're training to treat a human, help a human, and we are told that you are a part of the system. You will never make money outside of hospital systems. And if you try, then you're going straight to jail. They taught us in residency. You take a pen from a drug company, straight to jail. You go to lunch with a drug company, straight to jail. Like all those things, you grew up in this system as a fear, right?
Yeah.
But then you realize, like, well, then who's fucking making all the money in this? Well, it's probably, it's the bosses. Holy shit. Like, you start to realize that you've been stuck in the matrix this whole time, and you unplug yourself and you realize, well, damn, like, there's a whole nother world out there. And many, I would say the most medical providers don't have it. They don't have the ability to really go all in and build a business because they have no business acumen. I had to go back and get my MBA in business healthcare. I had to learn about running a business by running businesses, by making mistakes. And
Yeah.
I had great mentors, but not in the medical field. I had zero medical field mentors. So I had to figure that out myself in the medical field. Growing a business this big in multiple different aspects of the medical field, and so, really, the entrepreneurial mindset of what we built in Charismedx is a community where you get like-minded people, but we help solve your business-related back-end problems. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about the medical stuff here and there, but just like we talked about the last 40 minutes,
Yeah.
that is a lot of common knowledge in our world. However,
Right.
how to run a business to
Yeah.
7 figures, 8 figures, and even 9 figures is not.
Yes.
So we teach them how to think at the next level. We teach them how accountability is the number one, really core value that they all need to have, because instead of shit rolling downhill in your residency and when you work in the hospital, shit rolls uphill when you are the leader. It's always your fault.
Yeah.
So operate with that system. Build this. We teach them how to build the data system so they can replace themselves. And they rise to people rise to the level of the systems that are built.
Yeah.
Teaching people.
Yeah. The James Clear. Yeah. That James Clear quote.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Operating in reality and not ego. I always say, run your business off of facts, not feelings.
Yeah.
And that you need to make sure that everything you do is measured and managed.
Yeah.
Because if you're just saying, well, I felt like that was good, or I feel like this
Yeah.
could be better, again, your feelings are irrelevant. It is what the data shows. Are you doing X, Y, Z, and it's producing this amount of money? If not, well, you got to do X or Y or Z better to produce that money.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, the old Peter Drucker quote, as he was saying that, I'm thinking of, it's hard to manage, or it's impossible to manage what you can't measure. And like you say, like get your feelings out of it. Like, yes, there's a mindset piece to it, there's an emotional piece to it, but there's also a processes and systems and logistics piece that cares zero about your feelings. And like you said, the James Clear
Right.
quote. And that's why I talk a lot about a systematic approach. That, like, listen, you need a system, because you're not going to rise to the level of your goal and your aspirations and your dreams. Your system is going to, pardon my French, your system's going to fuck you, or your system is going to bless you, you
Yep.
know? And it's like, that's really where
Absolutely.
you want to be. And so it's like, all right. And like you said, accountability, like, you don't have to figure it out on your own. That's the long way. And it's like, why don't you learn from the strength and the experiences and even the mistakes of others, and let them
Yep.
pull you up and let them give you accountability and push you. I mean, there's I always say, in like with fitness, there's always that one guy out of like 20 or 50 who's the David Goggins, who can like kill himself by himself, right? But like the rest of us, like, I need a coach, I need a workout partner, I need a team.
Yeah.
I need somebody that's going to push me and be like, no, if that dude can do it, I'll do 5 more reps. And it's like, it's the same thing in the business space. So, and I think too, you didn't say this word, but like, kind of that growth mindset, just like as a health pro and a medical pro, like, yeah, if you're good, you have this insatiable lust for knowledge. And like, I want to learn how this works so I can help people. But like you said, we're not really taught that on the business side. So like, we're super strong on the health and medical side, but then you're just anemic. And like you said too, that's going to keep you in the system. That's not good. That's not going to break you out, because you have no idea. And I've learned this the hard way. I think it's the journey of a lot of people. Unless you have great mentoring or coaching when you're young, you have a parent who is an entrepreneur or an uncle or something like that, is you're going to push out into this world outside of the system, because the system doesn't work. And then you're going to be like, shit, I don't know how to run this business. And you're going to fail and fail and fail until, like you said, you link up with a mastermind group, you get a mentor, or you learn from your past mistakes. So the growth
Yeah.
mindset of like, you have to want that as much as you want to help people, you know?
Abs- Absolutely. And growth is one of our core values in Genesis that we have, where it's not just professional growth where you're learning more about these systems or anything like that. It's growth more for yourself. And when you realize as a business owner that everybody works for themselves, nobody works for you, they all work for themselves. And you can push them to grow personally and professionally, then learning becomes a lifestyle for them. Consistently learning, whether that's at home to be a better dad or a better sibling or a better son, or whether it's a better wife or whatever you need to do at home versus at work to sell better, build a better business, build better infrastructure. All of that pours into how much money you're going to make.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about kind of core values. So break it down, like how many, what do you think are the essential pieces that, like, listen, if somebody has these 4 things or 3 things or 5 or 7 or whatever they are, if they consistently have this mindset and they're doing these things, it's just a matter of time before they're going to be very, very successful. Like and I don't want to say it's formulaic, but it seems
Yeah.
a little bit like it kind of is.
Yeah, it really is formulaic when you think about it. If you have the ability to like learn, where you just have like that relentless curiosity.
Yeah.
You're always learning, but then not only are you learning that stuff, because knowledge isn't power, applied knowledge is power. So you can learn forever. And we've had
Yeah.
friends that go to masterminds all fucking day long, and they consume mastermind this and mastermind that and mastermind this, and then they don't actually apply any of it or act upon any of it. And they're in the same place they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So
Right.
not only learning and being curious, but also then applying everything you have 100%. So applying it right away. As speed of implementation is the person who's going to win the most. The person
Yeah.
implements faster than anybody else. The second thing is going to be like and as I've grown in business, I see this more and more. I only have so much energy in the day. So energy management is more important than time management. So every day you have all these little decisions that you have to make, and decision fatigue sets in. So as I've grown in business, it's funny because I wear only Genesis shirts or only Spinoso shirts or only a shirt of my business. That's all I have. I have 30 to 35 shirts of only my businesses on them. That's it. I don't have to worry about anything else. I choose that and I choose a pair of shorts out of the shorts drawer. I have the same type of shorts in 12 different colors.
Right.
And that's it. I don't
Right.
have to choose what I'm gonna wear that day. I don't have to decide. I eat the same breakfast, usually the same lunch. I don't have to choose breakfast or lunch. Like, I don't have to choose all these things. So energy
Yeah.
management of my
Yeah.
decisions during the day are quicker, and my conversations get quicker as well. I don't need 30 minutes to meet with you. I need 7. And if you can't get it done in 7, then you need to fix your issue with bringing something to me, because I don't need more than 7 minutes to solve 90% of problems. And that goes back to the trainings of, the olden days where our board exams were 7 minutes with a client to
Mhm.
try and diagnose them in our boards, in our step 3 boards. It was 7 minutes.
Right.
And so when you take that into your meetings, it's like, what do you need an hour meeting for?
Yeah.
You fucking don't.
Right.
What do
Yeah.
you need? Like, do you need to actually talk to me, or can you email your question and have
Yeah.
it get back to you instantly? You don't need to waste a lot of time on
Yeah.
this. So energy management is one thing that's also going to be successful. And then really the third thing third and fourth things I'll say go together. Third thing is grit. And that
Yeah.
goes with curiosity.
I'm
So
glad you
so
said
say
that.
you get curiosity, getting shit done, and then realizing that you're gonna get kicked in the fucking teeth over and over and over. And there's a great quote in a cartoon, and I love watching cartoons, but it's called Adventure Time. And one of the characters is like, well, sucking at something is the first step towards kind of being good at something.
Right.
And
Right.
that's
Right.
exactly what it is.
Right.
Like, you're going to suck at things over and over and over, and as long as you learn right away and implement what you
Yeah.
learned right away, hey, you're going to improve and get better. So you gotta suck, and that's part of grit. You gotta get through it, and
Yeah.
there's a great TED Talk on this now that shows that instilling grit in your children is the number one factor of whether that child will be successful in the rest of their lives, is grit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then the last thing is go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead. I was just going to affirm everything you said, but keep going.
Oh, and then the last thing is just being fucking nice. There are some shitty ass people out there, and there are some shitty ass employees and shitty ass, just terrible attitude people. And if you could just get somebody who is kind, nice, and thinks about others in no matter what they do, then you could teach them the rest.
Yeah.
Like, what we do is not rocket science. But if you could get that type of person
Yeah.
that wants to learn continuously, will push the limits of themselves,
Yeah.
is smart on energy management and making decisions, has grit, and really in the end is just a good, nice person, that
Mhm.
person will fucking win 100% of the time. And they say like, good guys don't win. That's an old phrase, and in business, that's fucking horseshit. Because the bad guys in our world, the bad guys make a shitload of money and win for about 3 to 5 years, and then they go to jail, or the DOJ takes their license away, or their business is shut down because
Right.
everybody fucking hates working with them.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and we live in an age now too where it's like, listen, people can take you they can take it to the streets, they can take it to the court of public opinion. And it's like, listen, I can go on Google.
It's social media.
That's it. And it's like
You
that's
can't
fucking
fucking hide.
awesome.
You can't hide.
You can't hide. You can't hide. No, and it's as you're talking about those things, you're like, it's not rocket science, but it's really freaking hard. Like to layer those things that you just described, everybody understands what you're saying. Like, be a lifelong learner, have a growth mindset. Okay, be continually curious. Don't be stuck. You're not done growing as a human. Okay, I don't know everything that there is to know, and I'm going to get rewarded for learning. But I'm not just going to sit here and learn. I'm going to apply as soon as I learn something of value. Right? So it's like it's easy for some people to learn and super hard for them to apply. But it's like those have to go together.
Absolutely.
Energy management to me is efficiency, where I'm like, listen, you want to
Yep.
be inefficient. You want to be inefficient. I have 5 children at home. My wife and I cannot afford
Okay, yeah.
Right. So I have twin boys that are 2. Our oldest is 13.
Okay.
If we are inefficient, we will get 0 done. You
I get
know?
it. Yeah, I've got 3-year-old triplets and a 10-month-old.
Ah, you got multiples. Nice.
Yeah, I got multiples as well.
3-year-old triplets, dude. I'm gonna tell my wife that. That's wild. But like,
Yeah,
there's
that's fun.
home too. Like, you have to have an efficient home or you're gonna suffer. You have to delegate and you got to be gritty.
Yep.
Like, you gotta, and there's an old quote. I think it's a presidential quote. I don't know who it was, one of the presidents from early 20th century, but he talks about like, there's plenty of educated derelicts. He's like, it's not the trait that is the trait that is timeless, and it's perseverance and grit, because you are going to fail. The first, what is it? Hormozy. I follow Hormozy online, and he's like, my first 9 businesses failed. It's like Abraham Lincoln, maybe the greatest president, lost a bunch of elections before he was
Yep.
elected. No, Michael Jordan cut from the JV team, right? Didn't make the varsity team as a freshman or whatever. So it's like just being able to suffer longer than everybody. And like you said, though, the last one ties it all together, because plenty of people who are like that, who are ambitious and driven, but they're assholes. And they're like, I'm going to step on you. But like, at the end of the day, you're just going to leave like this pile of bodies behind you. And you're going to be a toxic person. And you have to wake up and look at that guy in the mirror and to realize that you can have an incredible amount of success and be be just a considerate human being as much as you can be, you know?
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. But like you said, though, having a group, and that's kind of what your mastermind group is, it's a community where it's like we have these core values and we're trying to hold each other accountable and we're encouraging each other on this side, as well as the data system and the back end stuff. So it's like mindset and practical systems. When you combine those things, it's kind of a recipe for success, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean, I've successfully done it dozens and dozens of times in multiple different fields within the medical, corporations, whether that's insurance or cash pay. So, it works.
Yep, that's awesome. Well, Alex, I know we're a little bit over on the time that you had. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate everything you had to say. Hopefully, if your schedule opens up and we can steal another 30 or 60 minutes in the future, I'd love to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. I'll touch base with you soon.
Okay. Have a great
All
one.
right. You too. Thanks, Alex.
Bye.